And if we're talking football, there's only one place to start, and that is the Wellington Phoenix woman who had a victory on the weekend. And it was a very interesting victory because the player who got the ball at halfway and dribbled and then shot from the outside the box scored a goal, which I think might be her second pretty damn impressive goal in a matter of weeks.
Very similar goals too.
Is Grace Jale, who you were asking rhetorical questions about. You were curious about what Grace Jale is doing. What's her best position? Has she stepped up? Blah, blah, blah. And then she comes out with 2 goals and she just scored goals. And I think you're fired up. So I'll just stop talking and I'll throw it over to you. Grace Jale. She scored the goals. Maybe got a bit of confidence, maybe tapping into her potential and all the stuff that has seen her be consistently in the football ferns, consistently get A-League jobs. But also, my question is, like, has she settled into a role during this period with the Wellington Phoenix?
I think she's starting to. Because, yeah, all them questions I was asking of Grace Jale a couple of weeks ago perhaps maybe weren't so rhetorical after all if she's suddenly answering a few of them. And one of those, like the main overwhelming part of that is, where are you best suited to like what role gets the best out of you for yourself and for the Wellington Phoenix, and also potentially with the Football Ferns context in mind as well, because she's someone who's played a lot for the Football Ferns and does actually have a pretty good record of goal scoring. Like, I think she's got something like a goal every 3 games, which is about the best in the Ferns system right now, especially with Hannah Wilkinson having retired. However, I think all of those goals were against Oceania teams. I think every single one of the goals she scored has been against Oceania teams across the last 2 World Cup qualifying / Olympic qualifying type, whatever, Nations Cup, whatever they are, just events that she's participated in. So perhaps there are some bloated figures there. And there's, even then, when she was the top scorer for the Ferns at the Olympic qualifying early last year, it was like, well, she should have scored more. Like, she missed a penalty in one of the games. She missed a couple of good, like, close-in chances. I think it was 1 or 2 headers that just didn't even look confident about, which is a little bit of a concerning when she's a tall, strong player who you expect would be good in the air. So there's ways in which maybe that has flattered to deceive, but also it's, she's been thrust into a role with the Football Ferns like a few others have around her age as well, where it's just like there were no other attackers. They didn't nurse a second tier of attackers. They didn't have I'm talking in like sort of the 2010s era. They didn't really have a succession plan there. A bunch of them retired at once, and you just had to chuck in the youngsters rather than being able to do what the Black Caps are doing with Bevan Jacobs, perhaps, of like bring them in, have them in a squad, let them get an idea of it, but don't necessarily throw them straight in there in the deep end. A lot of players like Grace Jale, Gabby Rennie, Jackie Hand, Indy Riley, a lot of these players were thrown in the deep end for the Football Ferns because there just wasn't depth in those positions. Now they are the depth, so but there's suddenly, we'll see what this looks like when the Football Ferns next play, but there are a lot of other players from outside that Olympic squad in those positions who are suddenly starting to put their hands up too. So there is pressure on some of these players to perform. And Grace Jale is probably one of the ones who has a good reputation and has done very good things, but maybe hasn't done them consistently enough to maybe justify the hype, certainly, of her signing coming back to the Wellington Phoenix. So it was like, well, where is she best suited? Is she a winger? Should she be playing centrally as an attacking midfielder, as a striker, maybe as a secondary striker, which I think maybe is the position I would have lent on, as someone who plays off of a goal-scoring striker who has the ability to drop in, link up, and create and stuff like that. But that's kind of the role that Alyssa Wynnham's playing at the Wellington Phoenix at the moment. So that's not really on either. What we've seen from Grace Jale in the last few weeks is her being used after a period in which she was playing off the bench, like wasn't in the starting lineup for a few weeks, but she's come back in and is playing more as a left winger. And that seems to suit pretty nicely. Like her work rate's pretty good. You often get the feeling with Jale, like maybe it's not so much about is she putting in enough effort, but it's like are you putting in the effort at the times when it matters the most? But I don't know. It's almost like she just needed to find a kind of anchor to her performances. And in the last couple of weeks, she's belted two fantastic shots. One of them probably should have been saved, the first one, but the one against Perth, you weren't saving that. That was just a banger into the bottom corner, a fantastic shot. Maybe this is it. Like she's found a little bit of depth with these worm burning shots and like low into the bottom corner. Well, that might open up the rest of her game as well. I mean, we saw in the Perth one, she dribbled into that position. That was technically an assist from the goalkeeper as well, which is a rarity that's always funny when that happens in football, where the keeper booted it up to her and about halfway, she carries it about 30 meters and then shoots bottom corner. But if she's got that, you can't let her keep dribbling into those positions anymore if you're an opposition A-League team. Like you know now she scored 2 goals like this in the space of a couple of weeks. You can't let her run in those positions. You got to close her down. If you close her down, you create space for Alyssa Wynnum, for Olivia Ferguson, for maybe Emma Main or Mibe Tanaka or whoever else is on the other side. Like just having that thing, that like sort of anchoring element to your game. And we have seen Alyssa Wynnum try a few shots from this range and not get any power on them whatsoever. So maybe that's not her element. She would rather be feeding a sneaky ball through or throwing in a step over and dribbling into the area or whatever. But in order to do that, she needs the defense to step up a little bit rather than standing off and letting her shoot. So having someone like Grace Jolly angling in with that kind of putting ideas in the defender's head, that matters, that helps. And the Phoenix have been a very good defensive team all season outside of the first half of the season. Where they've struggled to get results is in turning decent enough performances in midfield and very strong defensive performances into are you creating enough chances? Are you scoring enough goals? Whatever. Even against Perth, they had a bit of that, where the first half was pretty even. They didn't really create a whole lot, but then Jale comes and scores a great goal early in the second half. And from there, they absolutely dominated. Once they scored the goal and forced Perth to come out of their system a little bit more and like go at them, step forward, creates more space, opens the game up, and the Phoenix just kept hitting them on the break and doing very good thing. Eventually led to another goal. I think it was Lara Wall crossing it in for a very good header from Olivia Ferguson. I think I got those goals around the right way. I forget, but like that's how you. In fact, they probably should have won 3 or 4-0. They created other chances. They looked really good, and this was just such an encouraging performance coming back after a defeat the week before. But what was in its own way an encouraging defeat as well, because they only narrowly lost to Melbourne City away. They were leading for a while there in that game. They played pretty well and maybe deserved something from that one too. But they bounced straight back at home. 2-0 win against Perth Glory. They're sitting inside the top 6, I'm pretty sure, at the moment, and frankly should be expecting to stay in the top 6. I will write about them at some point. I think they might have a midweek game, so I might have to wait till next week. Actually, we'll see how the schedule works out. But I do want to write about this because this has been a thing that they've been aiming for from the start. They haven't made the finals yet. They should make the finals this season, the way they're playing, and especially if Grace Jolly is going to continue to bang in goals from distance, or at least put the idea in the defenders' heads to where that's something they have to focus on and create that space, like I'm saying, for others around her, and just give the team something to work around in attack, because they've been looking for this a bit. They've been looking of sort of like they've got the small ball stuff they talk about a lot, but how do they turn that into goals? How do they turn that into shots and chances? Well, we're starting to see some of that. So, yeah, fantastic win from them on the weekend, and they've been in great form for a couple months now. They've after how everything started in the men's A-League, it's actually the women's Phoenix team that are the most consistent, most in form of the Kiwi A-League sides at the moment.
Most consistent, most informed, but they did go win, draw, win, loss, win, which isn't consistent. But okay, they are
in consistent performances, but
they're in a nice spot. Yeah. They're in a nice spot. And Thursday night they take on Western Sydney Wanderers, who are second to last. So hopefully a couple more goals, one more win for the Wellington Phoenix women. And the men. It seems like there's going to be a bit of a break coming up in the A-League. Is that correct?
I don't know. There's no they might just have a bye because there's
Well, it
no
says the
international
A-League
break.
page has Tuesday, January 7th, then Friday, January 31st. So I don't know what's happened out there, if we're just tripping away, I'm not
Um,
sure. But my question though, we had a Wellington Phoenix loss, we had an Auckland FC draw. Which performance offered more happiness?
um, well, there seems to be fixtures all the way through. I don't know. The website is just a bit wonky sometimes. So I blame them. Um, which performance? Well, I'd say it's the Auckland FC one. Definitely was the better. I thought it was a 0-0 draw against Melbourne Victory at home on New Year's Day. It was a little bit of a dull game. It wasn't there like two good defensive teams kind of cancelled each other out, but I think that's a good place for Auckland FC to be in, where they're a good defensive team capable of cancelling things out, grinding out a point against a team that is, up and around them on the ladder. Melbourne Victory are one of the better teams in the league this season, and you'd prefer to win your home games, but that's a good solid point that doesn't do their season any harm. And most importantly about it is that in the last 2 weeks, they really do seem to have regained that defensive solidity that they started the season with, then lost it briefly after Dan Hall got injured, and they had to go looking for solutions. And it seems the solution that's worked the best is perhaps the obvious one, which is, well, you've got Tommy Smith there. I know you like him as a closer, but he's also your only other centre back in the squad. So maybe you just need to start him alongside Nando Peinecker. Smith's a good passer, so he's good with the ball at his feet. He always has been. So if he's a left footer having to play right centre back, that's fine. He can do that, and he has done that pretty well. And Auckland FC are less of a build it up from the back kind of team than the Phoenix anyway. So I don't think that really matters too much of those passing angles, not nearly as much as it would for the Knicks. In the way that we've seen them tinkering with their back lines in order to try find the right solutions there. Is with Auckland FC, it was just a bit more obvious. And Hiroki Sakai he's so good at right back. He was a good solid centre back, but he's so good at right back. Put him in a position where he can be one of the best players in the A-League. Don't put him in the position where you're turning one of the best players in the A-League into just an adequate role player. Put him in the place where he excels. Tommy Smith steps in alongside Nando Peinecker. Francis de Vries just got voted A-League Player of the Month or whatever, but those people don't take those things seriously. They're voted on by fans, and whenever they're voted on by fans, they get spammed. The Phoenix players always win this because the Phoenix kept spamming them over the last season, and now apparently Auckland FC has an online army as well. So this is good stuff from the Kiwi A-League fans. Keep spamming these things, keep winning them, but don't take the awards themselves too seriously. But De Vries has been excellent, and that's a solid back four, which in the last 2 weeks has been really good for them, and regained what they regained the identity that they showed at the start of the season. So I think that's really reassuring for Auckland FC. The Phoenix, not so much. They were pretty bad in losing to Melbourne City. They had one shot compared to about 20 odd for Melbourne City. However, as I wrote in the newsletter, I kind of felt there was the depressed vibes came out from the Phoenix fans in the wake of that result, where I'm watching this thinking, this is a bad day at the office. This isn't good, but also they conceded early, but then kept it at 1-0 for a very long time. They were playing against the team that had a lot of shots, but like we saw last season, most of those shots outside the box, low percentage things. Their XG was like 1.1 or something like that. So they weren't getting a lot out of those shots. So really felt like the Phoenix defense outside of the early goal they conceded and then the late goal that they conceded to clinch it. They had Melbourne City where they wanted them. They just didn't have a link in midfield. And Alex Rufer wasn't playing, so that's part of it. But also, even when Rufer is playing, I think they're still missing that, where the Nagasawa, Rattray, Rufer trio, three really good midfielders, but maybe all a little bit too similar to each other. And I'm not sure that you have a guy in that team who can do for them what Anoli Longo is doing for the Phoenix women at the moment, which is not just collecting the ball from defense, but advancing it and carrying it forward, rolling on the ball, like being able to, it's not about doing what Grace Jale did and dribbling 30 meters and then shooting. It's about, can you dribble 2 meters to open up the space for someone else? The Phoenix almost play a little bit too much. It's like it's 1 or 2 touch passes when they're trying to work it out through the midfield. And sometimes you just, you put your foot on the ball, or sometimes you roll on the ball when you collect it, just to turn for the defender, the half turn stuff. The half turn the defender and pick out a pass to open up the other side of the pitch or whatever, or these kind of things, which also help your wingbacks or fullbacks, whichever formation they're playing. Also gives them more time to get forward, and therefore you get players in support of Costa Barbarouses rather than just watching Costa run around by himself. Like, I think they need something there as a link. Last season it was Ben Old, because he would do those Grace Jale dribbles, pick up the ball in halfway and run for ages. You're not going to replace that skill set. It's a very unique one. It's why he's found his way to the French top flight, is because they went looking for someone who can do that, and they had to go all the way to Ben Old in Wellington to find a guy who was who could do that for them. And he was doing that for him until he got injured. And don't know how long he's still out for, but I'm guessing he'd have at least another month on the sideline. It was a bit of a gnarly injury. But yeah, I guess the dream is that Marco Rojas will do it when he comes back and is playing consistently. And we saw some glimpses of this kind of thing from him, but I almost think they need someone deeper as well. And maybe it's just a matter of Retro and Nagasawa changing how they play a little bit to adapt. We'll see. Chibi is a very intelligent man. He's coming up with ideas. He's thinking about this stuff constantly, but yeah, a little bit too rigid in how they play in the midfield at the moment. But overall, I mean, I don't think it was a pretty terrible performance, but I don't think it's a terrible performance that belies a terrible team. I think it's just a bad day. It's not like that's the consistent level they're at. And yeah, well, we'll see how they bounce back from that. It's a pretty nasty one, but I do think that's the kind of game, especially away in Melbourne where they've always struggled. It's the kind of game where you can just you can wipe the memory clear of that one afterwards and just move on with a better performance next week.
That better performance next week will be on Saturday against Adelaide United in Wellington, but Adelaide United are second in the A-League. So I don't know if they're going to get that performance against Adelaide. Auckland are away, distance derby in Perth. Perth are second to last. So
they did recall Ollie Sale though.
Oh, big Donny.
And then
Ollie
they
Sale.
lost like 4-3 to a 95th minute bicycle kick. So Ollie Sale just can't catch a break, that dude.
Someone who has caught a break in the Flying Kiwis department, Sarpreet Singh. Clinical goal off the shoulder. I think he headed home another goal. So he's in nice touch with, who's he playing for? UD Lieria. So shout out to him. Lieria. We also had Andre de Jong scored a double. And Matt Garbutt, superhero for NAC Breda last season. Big time. Fan favourite. Lots of good vibes there, but you seem to think he's on the outer with NAC Breda. We also had a goal for Nico Kerwin, Calcio Padova, which you described as a match winner. Oh, it did come in the 37th minute, so...
Yeah, but it was a 1-0 win.
It won the match for Calcio Padova. Roll through those Flying Kiwis, bits and bobs, hard and fast, quickly and efficiently.
Well, Sarpreet Singh is the leader in Flying Kiwis this week because he is superb. He's turned up in Portugal. Took him a little while to get going, bit of an injury at the start, but from the moment that he scored his first goal, they've been a different side. They did change their manager around the same time as well, so that's also a factor, but I choose to believe that Sarpreet Singh is the major factor in this whole thing. He comes off the bench, scores a winning goal a couple of weeks ago, and since then, he's scored 4 goals in 5 games, including that one. He started the other 4 games. They've won 4 of those 5 games. So the team just is on a bit of a roll. They're not so far removed from the promotion playoff chances as well. I don't think they'll get promoted, but they're at least putting themselves in a place where they can compete for it and build off the back of that. And you never know what might happen because Matt Garbutt's NAC Breda are a very good example of a team where if you just get yourself in the mix, who knows? They were the lowest qualifying team in the Dutch playoffs from the second division last year, and then just went on a roll where they beat a bunch of teams that were better than them all season. They just beat a bunch of them in a row and got promoted, and then changed their manager, and then their manager changed their style a bit. And Matt Garbutt, who was he was in and out of the team last year, so it's not like he was a locked in first 11 player, but he also hasn't been that this year. He's been in and out, and he's played a bunch of different positions, and he hasn't found a settled role. And now their coach has left him behind for their training camp in Spain during the winter break, and has he's explicitly told the media that Garbutt just hasn't developed enough, and it doesn't quite, he likes him as a person, but he's picking a football team here, and he just, it's not working out. It's not you, it's me. I don't know, but they've told him he can look elsewhere, and so I think he will find himself another club within the next couple of weeks. He's been told to do so, at least. So, bit of a bummer there, but also, it's not a bummer until you see where he turns up. And even if you see where he turns up and it's not as good as where he was before, well, Sarpreet Singh is a good example of how that doesn't necessarily matter. Like, Sarpreet Singh's played for Bayern Munich, sure. Now he's playing second division mid-table in Portugal. That feels like a big drop, but also he's playing. He's playing a lot. He's got a settled role. They're letting him loose as an attacking midfielder, and he's doing great things. He scored 4 goals in 5 games. He looks confident. He looks happy. Like you can see it in his celebrations from the goals. Like, he's loving it. He's enjoying just being able to play football again and play football well and win games and contribute to those wins and all this good stuff, where just like smiling Sarpreet Singh is a beautiful thing. It's been far too much in his career of the opposite of that. So he's very, very, very overdue these good vibes that he's experiencing, and hopefully long may it continue. But this is a lot like Elijah Just moved to Austria as well, where he goes to a second tier team in Austria. People are thinking, well, why, he can do better than that. Surely he can play at a higher level. Like, yeah, he could. He could sit on the bench for a team in the top division of Denmark like he used to do. Or he could start every week for a team in the second division in Austria and be the man. And it's the version of Elijah Just that's been starting every week in Austria and scoring a bunch of goals, which has carried on into All Whites games recently, where he's continued to start a bunch of games and score a bunch of goals. Like, that's the version of him that's been the most effective for the All Whites, not the guy who was sitting on the bench and popping up here or there. So hopefully I don't have to say hopefully the same thing will happen with Sarpreet Singh, because he always is that guy when he plays for the All Whites. But the fact that he's match fit, the fact that he's confident, that's only going to help him. That's actually better for the national team to have him at a lower level, but more confident. So great stuff there. Love seeing Sarpreet Singh doing well. Who else did you mention? Nico Kerwins is not this. It's not that interesting because it's third tier Italy. I've sort of faded out on him a little bit because since his injury, he wasn't playing so much. But he's had a nice little pocket recently. He started, I think, 4 games in a row. He just scored his first goal of the season, playing as a right wing back. He might get himself back into All Whites contention. I think that right back spot is definitely a vulnerable one, which is gonna help him there, because it's Tim Payne and kind of no one else. So if you want to be the backup there, you've got an opportunity. Whereas on the left side, who wants to be thenichecache's backup? Well, you've got Francis de Vries, you've got Dalton Wilkins, you've got James McGarry, you've got Sam Sutton, you've got probably someone else I'm forgetting about. You've got a lot of options there who can play left back. It's kind of just Tim Payne and no one else on right back. Maybe Callan Elliott would probably be the next in line, I would suggest. Possibly, I'd say possibly Matt Sheridan, but he doesn't really play right back ever for the Phoenix, so probably not.
Sakai?
Unfortunately, he's been to multiple World Cups with Japan, so we won't be able to get him on the eligibility status.
I remember, like Andrew Durante, he qualified for New Zealand and then he left New Zealand.
He played 20 or 30 odd times for the All Whites first, so he put in some work. But yeah, then he left, and I don't think he'll ever live in New Zealand again. But it was nice while it lasted. This is also why
I'd rather have Sakai.
Sakai would be our best ever right back, so that would be cool. Unfortunately, the ship sailed long before he ever heard of us. We'll see. But was there someone who else was on the list? Oh, Andre De Jong.
Yeah.
Speaking of possible all-weight call-ups, I've been saying this for a little while. His form to start the season in South Africa was great, was deserving of a call-up for the all-whites. Maybe just the problem is that he's not different enough from the players that are there to get a point. Like Chris Wood is going to play as a number 9. Ben Wayne's probably going to be in squads. Maybe Ben Wayne hasn't been doing that much this season. Maybe Andre De Jong can push him out. Max Mata's also in there, but he's playing off the bench for Auckland FC. So maybe there's an option as a backup 9. That's also not the role he plays in South Africa. He's more as a number 10, which means he's competing with Sarpreet Singh and Elijah Just, who are in fantastic form at the moment. So yeah, it's sketchy. I'm not sure how that works, but if he does get picked, he deserves it because he's been great. He just scored 2 goals in a 2-0 win in a Confederation Cup tie for Stellenbosch, which Confederation Cup is like Africa's Europa League. It's the second tier continental competition. They lost their first 2 games. This is the first time Stellenbosch have ever been there, but also De Jong did play a little bit for Amazulu previously in this competition. And Jeremy Brockie played quite a bit. In fact, I think Michael Boxall might have still been there when Supersport were there one season as well. So there's a little bit of recent history in this competition. Nothing before that, but a little bit of recent history. And Andre De Jong is adding to that. But there is another name that you left off as well. The boy Stipe Ukich, the phenom, the Bevan Jacobs of New Zealand football, even though he's just turned 18, and because he's just turned 18, he's allowed to sign a professional deal overseas, and because he's allowed to sign a professional deal overseas, he's done it. He's signed with NK Istra in 1961 in Croatia, their top division. They're probably in a relegation battle, but it's top division Croatian football, and if he makes his debut, there'll be some their winter break at the moment, like a lot of them, so there'll be some friendly stuff first. Couple of weeks to get acclimatized. If he makes his debut at the first possible opportunity, it'll be against Dinamo Zagreb. Dinamo Zagreb, in that fixture, will have just a few days earlier played, like during the midweek before that game, before the Croatian League comes back. During the midweek before that, they will have just played a Champions League game against Arsenal, and they've just hired Fabio Cannavaro, Italian legend. Former, I think, did he coach Real Madrid at one point? He definitely played for Real Madrid. But Italian World Cup winning captain, I think he was when they did that once upon a time. He's their new manager. So if you're wondering why Stipe Ukich has gone straight to Europe rather than trying to sort of consolidate things in the A-League first, well, that's why, because he can go straight to that level where he's playing against a Fabio Cannavaro coach Champions League team.
When should I be keeping an eye out for Stipe Ukich stuff? When's that game you're talking about?
That is in 3 weeks. I think it's whatever the 24th, 25th, 26th, something around there. Like last week of the month, basically. When you see Dinamo Zagreb playing against Arsenal, you know we're counting down. But we'll get an idea maybe from some of his friendlies. I'll track some of that to see if he's actually getting good game minutes. Because often it's like an 18-year-old will join a overseas team. They're sitting in the academy side or the reserves for a little while first. I don't get the impression that that's the case with Stipe Ukich, though. I think they've signed him very much for an immediate first team picture. We'll see how accurate my initial inkling is there, but the way they're talking about him definitely sounds like a guy that they want in and around their first team to try and get them a few more goals, because they've struggled with goals and they are trying to avoid relegation. And because they're a team in the bottom half of the table, that probably gives them a bit more scope as well to take a punt on someone like that. But my guess is he's going to be involved pretty quickly for these guys. Might be a bench role, but probably will be a bench role. But we'll see how he tracks. But like I've said in the past about him, he is a player who, despite his age, he's tall, he's pretty strong, he's quick, he's athletic. And he's very, very scrappy. He's got that sort of mongrel mentality about him as well. I don't think he will have trouble fitting in. I think he's got all the elements that you want for a guy to go over there and be himself from day one for a good team like that. So we'll see. I will be tracking this one closely because, like I was saying about tracking Lara Wall and seeing her doing well in the A-League, I definitely feel an affinity for a guy who can go straight from National League to playing at a top flight European club at age 18. At age 18 and 0 days, because he basically signed the thing on his birthday. They were just waiting for him to be old enough to be able to sign.